We continue in the 20th chapter. Chapter 20, in one word, lavadoi, alone. What does that mean? Alone? Spoken about that. It's not to be alone. Well, we'll speak about that another time more. Before God created the world, he was single, singular and one, and excuse me, and alone. The only one. Single and unique. After he created the world, guess what? He's one and alone. Single and unique. Creation doesn't add something to God, doesn't subtract something from God, right? When I give something to another, well, it's subtracting something from me, right? Give you my pen. Well, I don't have a pen now. So that's taking something away, right? Now, it might be for a greater good. That's not the point. It's a metaphor to understand that you're lacking something. Now, on the other hand, giving you something might enhance me. So what are we saying here? That before God created the world, he was singularly unique and one and only, the only thing. After he creates the world, nothing changed. In other words, we didn't subtract anything or add anything to him. So we need to clarify this point. And by the way, where we're going this, because it's going to be a bit of a journey, is to appreciate how we can access something inside of us called avamusateris, a hidden love. Hidden because it's covered over the fact that we have an animal soul that is our primary responder in life, or first responder, should I say. Hopefully not primary, but first responder at least, right? In other words, how's it good for me? Rather, how's it serve the purpose it was created for? For example. And that's what we're going to. In order that we can access that hidden love that wants to rise to that occasion, we're going through a process over here. Because it does arise, that hidden love, as we explained in chapters 18 and 19, when we're put to a test of faith. For the most, in the last, 3,300 years of Jewish experience, Jews gave up their lives rather than giving up their faith, rather than giving up their connection to their identity, to their Jewishness, to God. They gave up their lives. Now, we don't want to do that just because, we probably don't want to do it for many reasons. But moreover, that's not the point. The point isn't to die for your religion. The point is to live with your faith, with your avamusateris, the hidden love. In other words, not because that love emerged and therefore I'm not going to, trade in my faith, trade in my religion, trade in my identity, I'm not, because of that hidden love. Now, how are we going to live with it? So this is going to be a process over here, not an overnight one, of understanding. And the key to understanding it here is the unity, the oneness of God. So the beginning point is the oneness of God is creation did not add anything to him. Right? In other words, before God created the world, he was one and only, singular and unique. After he creates, he says one and only, singular and unique. How do you understand that? I mean, the consequence of that is one thing, but before we even get to the consequence, how do you understand that? So we need to clarify this point. So today, the Alter Rebbe is going to give us a metaphor and will not unpack the metaphor. That'll be in the following class. But there's, well, let's go for the metaphor. So, how does God create the world? Not like um, the silversmith or the goblet maker, how we do things. We take something and we mold it into something else. So here are some, some clay was taken and it was made into a earthenware vessel called a mug. Someone more capable can take some silver that is malleable and shape it into a goblet, into a kiddush cup. And voila. But what can we do? We can take something and from that something form it into something else. We create nothing. Nothing. We form things. We reshape things. Well, actually, E equals MC squared, right? So it's all there. Now the question is that what we do with it and how we reshape things in this physical world and even in non-physical in a sense. That's not the case with God. God creates with his word. Let there be light, vahi or. And it is only because that word is reverberating constantly through, consistently, constantly in light or in the goblet. Let there be a goblet, right? It sustains and it doesn't revert to nothingness. This is called something from nothing, or yesh mi'ayin in Hebrew, ex nihilo, if you want to, I think that's Latin. That before the world was created, there was no thing, nothing that we can comprehend, nothing that we experience, no thing, just God. God's not a thing. From that no thing of God, of nothingness, comes a yesh, comes something. That's something from nothing. How is that word of God? It is sustaining everything in the creation. So, in other words, the word of God that's sustaining me, whoa! Without it, not like I kind of regress. Not that I'll have a, God, let's not speak about me or anybody. That someone would die. No, you wouldn't die because you're still something. You're still a body. No, you would revert to absolute no thing, nothingness, as before creation. So, vis-a-vis ourselves, this is important to appreciate, and there's a lot that we will learn in the third part of Tanya to appreciate the power created within creation. But right now, that's not the focus. The focus over here is not how that word is so important that God is animating me and everything of the universe and everything of the galaxies and everything of the spiritual worlds with his word, and it only exists because of it. But now let's, relative to God, the word that he creates with, right? How's that relative to him? That word. So this is the metaphor, because this is the key. And from this metaphor, what the analog will be is what is the significance of, or the reality of the reality, the significance of the world. That's what this metaphor will help us with, which again we will unpack in the following class. We're going to get the metaphor now. So what's the metaphor? Is from you and I, from the soul of a human being. We utter a lot of words, but how about one word? What's the value or the significance of what? Not the significance of something that Rebbe once told a soldier, an Israeli soldier, who was lost his legs in mine, whatever, with it. And a group of Israeli soldiers came in 1976 to the Rebbe, to 770. And this person was suffering greatly, that no one appreciated everything that he had done for the Jewish state. Without going into the details. And the Rebbe just said two words to him, looked him in the eyes and said, "Thank you." And everything melted away. Now, so we're not speaking here, the Alter Rebbe is not speaking here about the impact of a word or two words in this instance, that not the impact that it has on you and I, when someone says a kind word or the opposite, right? That's not the metaphor over here. The metaphor is here, or even whatever, thanks, relative to the articulate soul, meaning the power of speech as a whole that I have. How significant is that? Again, not the impact. How significant? Well, totally insignificant. Why? Because if I could, and if you would stay, I could talk and talk and talk to no end. Well, yeah, I guess Shabbos would be an end, but then I could talk further. It just won't be, through any medium. It'll be direct, right here. So the power of the human being to articulate and to talk is endless, right? Actually, endless. The only reason it wouldn't be endless is because we have physical organs that engage in it, and at one point maybe you're going to get tired, right? But in concept, in theory, the one word relative to the power of articulation of the human soul is totally insignificant. Now, let's take it a step further in this metaphor. We talk, but that comes from somewhere. That comes from thought, right? Talk, you can, shut your mouth. Thought never shuts off. Now, in thought, just as in speech, we think in letters, in language, right? That's letters. And that's how we think. And the source of our speech is from our thoughts. Well, hopefully that we, think before we talk. Even if we don't, by the way, it's still the source over there, because you had that thought at one point and you just kind of, shooting from the hip, but the thought was there. So now relative to one word, again, not the impact of that word. I know that's very impactful, or thanks can be very impactful, absolutely, but no. The significance of that word relative to the thought process is even more insignificant than to speech. Now let's go a step further. Where do your thoughts come from? They come from you. Well, what part of you? Your neshama, your soul. And what part of the soul? Well, your intelligence and your emotions, right? Your intelligence and emotions. That's where your letters of thought come from. Well, compared to the core of your soul, now one word, totally insignificant. Totally nothing. Why? Even more so, right? Because at least speech and thought is made up of letters, words that are a language. Well, in my emotions and in my intelligence, they're not a language anymore. They're not a language. Intelligence is not a language. Emotions is not a language. It's a precursor. It is the source of the language that we think in and talk in, right? The heart is, and its feelings, its emotions, are beyond language, right? So, just like, if you have a feeling towards something, that feeling So that's why sometimes you can't articulate the feelings that you have in language, because the truth is, or even the idea that you have, you can't articulate in language properly. How come? Because it's much greater than language. It's much more powerful than language. When we bring it into language, when we put it into letters, into words, right, we are actually reducing the power of it. Now, we need to do that in order that we can communicate with another, of course, right? But for the purpose over here of the metaphor, the one word, right, that thanks, relative to the articulate soul that can speak and speak, is totally insignificant, even more insignificant to the power of thought, and even much, much more insignificant and relatively nothing from the source of all that thought and speech came from, which is from the soul itself. The emotions and the intelligence of the soul were there. It's beyond language. That's the metaphor. That's today's class.